Hello, and welcome to a live episode of Pop Culture on Deprogrammed with Carrie Smith. I am one of your hosts, Carrie, and I'm here with my mysterious co host, Mr. Chris. How are you?
Well, hello. How are you? I see you got a nice new studio behind you.
I know this is what we were working our butts off for like 10 weeks on, and why I was always tired. And it's fantastic. I want you to come visit. Are you coming to the feast, the church feast on Friday?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. I'm asking you on camera so I can pressure you. Kidding. I'm just kidding. No worries, we can't make it. But even if you don't come Friday, you have to come see it. We have to do an episode from here. We can preserve your anonymity in some creative way, even if you have to wear a Batman mask or something. That's what I think. Or if you talk from slightly off camera. Something. Anyway, welcome. Welcome to our fellow nerds, geeks, knitters, comic book fans, wrong thinkers, wrong sitters, wrong splainers, every kind of wrong that there is. Welcome. We're excited to hang out with you tonight. Mystery Chris is back. This is our second episode of the new year, and I'm really excited to have you back, Mystery Chris. So before we get into tonight's main topic, I wanted to tell you about something that is happening in Texas that you were aware of, but you haven't been following closely. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't been really following this.
So, Texas, if you go on Twitter right now, currently on X, whatever it's called, um, the, there are all kinds of people from other states. They're all just sharing the love for Texas tonight, which feels great. And everybody's sort of in this celebratory mood because Governor Abbott decided to give a big FU to the federal government and to Biden and to double down and stand his ground, to stand our ground. And so I'm just going to share this with you guys if you haven't seen it. So basically, the Supreme Court ruled, and when it comes to the border, I don't know if you guys know this, but Texas, Governor Abbott has been sending the Texas Guard to the border to try and secure the border and has been putting up wire and other things to try and prevent illegal crossings, of which we've had an unprecedented number since Biden took office. Not that it was great before he took office, it's just gotten even worse. And the federal government, Biden was sending Border Patrol to Texas to have them do the exact opposite of their job. Can you imagine this? Border Patrol's job, which is to secure the border. He was sending them here to make the border less secure, to cut the wire, to try and destroy everything that Texas had done to protect the border. And so the Supreme Court ruled on the side of the federal government, which I don't think is that I honestly don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that Ken Paxton, the attorney general here in Texas, needs to file. I think he needs to. I agree with the people who were saying he needs to go after to attack the precedent that they relied upon, to have them review the precedent itself. So here, I'm just going to read to you. Everybody was kind of waking up this morning wondering how Abbott was going to respond. And this is how he responded. He he basically, you can see pictures right now of the Texas Guard putting up more wire. They just doubled down, which is amazing. We basically doubled down. I'm very proud to be a Texan tonight. God bless Texas. Here's what Governor Abbott has to say. This letter is dated January 24th today. He says, the federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he has smashed records for illegal immigration. Despite having been put on notice in a series of letters, one of which I delivered to him by hand, President Biden has ignored Texas's demand that he perform his constitutional duties. President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. Instead of prosecuting immigrants for the federal crime of illegal entry, President Biden has sent his lawyers into federal courts to sue Texas for taking action to secure the border. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes that mandate the detention of illegal immigrants. The effect is to illegally allow their en masse parole into the United States. By wasting taxpayer dollars to tear open Texas's border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants away from the 28 legal entry points along this state's southern border, bridges where nobody drowns, and into the dangerous waters of the Rio Grande. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million, and that's just the ones we know about, by the way. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the US Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. That is why the framers included both Article 4, which promises that the federal government, quote, shall protect each state against invasion, end quote, and Article 1, Clause 3, which acknowledges, quote, the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders, end quote. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4 has triggered Article 1, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. For these reasons, I have already declared an invasion under Article 1, Clause 3 to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. The Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and other Texas personnel are acting on that authority as well as state law to secure the Texas border. Chills. Chills. What do you think about that?
I want to know why the Supreme Court ruled against that. Like, do you know like what was their reasoning?
I believe because it was based on precedent. I don't know the exact reasoning. I don't feel comfortable offering an answer on that. It's outside of what I understand currently, although I want to understand more. But what I've seen some constitutional scholars saying is, of course, they were going to rule that way because they were having them to they were basing it on precedent, and what they need to do, like in Roe versus Wade, is to challenge the precedent itself. And that made sense to
Mm,
me, a normie, and a
mhm.
normie when it comes to constitutional law. So, uh, I also his letter makes sense to me when it comes to, the executive office failing to uphold their constitutional duty. And I'm telling you, I feel there's some articles coming out now. Of course, there's a lot of, the left. My husband was just listening to NPR. A lot of the left, there's a lot of hand-wringing going on about this is a constitutional crisis, and, there's a lot of look, leftists like Beto, once, twice, 3 times a loser. The Beto, he's issuing statements basically calling a lot of the leftist politicians, they're calling for the federal government to invade Texas, to send the
Cool.
National Guard here. Which can you imagine that? It's political suicide, that to send armed what are they gonna do? Shoot Texans? What are they gonna do? I love that Abbott is basically like, "Get effed." Like, "We're gonna do what we're gonna do."
So
Uh,
so this
go
is
ahead.
setting in motion the events that are in that A24 movie coming out, the Civil War movie this year, where like Texas and California, which is stupid, secede from the Union. and there's a big civil war going on.
I don't know. I have no idea, but I'll tell you, all the Texit people like Daniel Miller, I got to interview him way back. He's the guy that wrote Texit, who he believes that within the span of 30 years we will secede from the Union. He's being interviewed again. He's talking, all the secessionists are talking again. And I'm since I interviewed him every year, I think more people are waking up to the possibility of a Texit. Now, well, I said this on Twitter, and some people, got upset in the comments, and here's the thing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Texit is a bad idea. I don't know, but it's worth considering, and it's worth talking about, and it's the direction I tend to lean. And the most important thing about considering it is that we need to make it a viable option in the minds of our people. Because if you think of it as something that's impossible, then the federal government has you by the balls. Like, the way I think about it is, if you get to a place where you understand that secession is possible, maybe probable, but at least possible, then you don't have anything to lose, and you'll take less shit from the federal government. And I think all of us need to get back to that attitude. We were a nation state. Texas was a nation state. We're one of very few states we were our own sovereign country. And if you haven't read it, I suggest reading the book Texit, because I think it'll open your mind to it being a possibility. The way I like to think of it is, we joined the Union like a marriage, and that relationship has become abusive, and the federal government continues to abuse us, and we just keep taking it. And at a certain point, you need to consider divorce, and at least consider it as a viable option and put it on the table, at the very least, to maybe wake up your partner, but also so that you can gain some of the power back for yourself, so that you're not walked all over. If you start to consider that as an option, you will put up with less abuse. That's what I think, psychologically anyway. That's true for individuals, and that's true for a population.
So what you're saying is that the United States of America is Ike Turner and Texas is Tina Turner.
Yes. And we need to stand up. Those legs were made for walking. We need to keep on rolling. Those legs were made for dancing and walking.
I mean, we don't need another hero, but
we'll be our own hero. Hey, give it up in the chat. Epic Mike is here. He says, I also miss hanging with you, Carrie. Epic Mike, we miss hanging with you. We've got to have you back. Mystery Chris took some time off. He's back now. We'll have to do a Wednesday night or Monday or Friday. I would love to talk with you. And it's good to see you here in the chat. I want to see what you guys are up to. You and I almost said Josiah. You and Josiah. Okay. Couple people in the chat who know more than I do, probably. Texas Sheep Lady said the Supreme Court didn't offer a reason, it's only temporary. What? Kevin Anderson says, I think it's just a stay on Texas actions while the case is litigated. Thank you, chat. Adam Worrell, is a constitutional crisis worse than a climate crisis? It is. It actually is. It is a constitutional crisis. I don't mean to make light of that, but I also like to get my laughs while we live through chaos. And I'm going to show you one more thing, because this cracks me up. There is a hilarious quote tweet thread going right now on Twitter where everyone is posting post the outfit that you'll be wearing to the constitutional crisis. And everybody's posting. Some are serious, some are hilarious, and it's funny to see how they match, if they match people's personalities or not. This is mine. Post the outfit you'll be wearing for the constitutional crisis. These are both stunning and practical. And what? I don't know.
Have those chaps?
Not yet, but now I know. I don't even know which one I would pick. I like both of them. I like the waistline here on the chat on the chaps. Look at that. It's sort of feminine, and I like the cuffs on that outfit, but I love this fringed leather cowgirl skirt. They both have holsters. Anyway.
Makes it look like she's half a furry. Should we got her top half? Just like, well, guess I'll just put on a cowboy hat.
These were really common. It kept their legs warm. If you look through old vintage cowboy photos, they all have, like, big furry legs like this.
Oh, that's sexy.
Okay. Well, that's not our topic tonight, but since it's breaking news today, I wanted to talk about it. Since it's local, it's Texas, and I'm just got so excited. People I know were texting me. A friend who I had not saved in my phone yet texted me about it and was excited, and I was like, "Yeah, I saw it. That's awesome." I was like, "Who is this?" People were just, like, celebrating, and like I said, online, people who are not even from our state are sort of giving praise to Abbott tonight, and it feels good. God bless Texas. I heard that song in the bathroom in a gas station yesterday. Hadn't heard that song in a long time.
Okay.
God bless Texas. Do you know that song?
Of course.
It's country, so but it's Texas, so I figured you would know it. Um, okay. One other announcement I forgot to make at the beginning. Let me just check over there and see if it's working. Is it working? We're supposed to be simulcasting tonight. We are. I think it's Is it working? Is there a problem? It says 6 people are watching, but it doesn't look like it's working. You guys tell me if you're on Rumble. We're supposed to be simulcasting on Rumble tonight. We successfully did so on Monday, and I'm still trying to figure out the Rumble kinks, and it appears to be working. So if you're watching over there, drop something in the chat over there so I know that it is not messed up. Oh, yes, Rumble is working, says Davina. Thank you, lady. Okay, cool. I'll try and keep an eye on that chat as we go. Okay. Do you want to set up the topic tonight?
We are talking about the mainstreaming of nerd culture. I've been fascinated by how nerd culture went from this small thing that had a stigma attached to it, that anybody who liked it was looked down upon, looked as a nerd. I remember when I was a kid, I dressed up as Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. I got pennies thrown at me. That's
What?
not scarring at all. I'm not angry about it.
Pennies?
Yeah, which I guess it's better than, like, throwing rocks at me because it's at least, like, some money. Maybe they're trying to help me. They were like, "Hey, here's some money. We like your Vulcan ears." I like to tell myself anyway. But
You
I
also can I tell people we've mentioned this before, it's still in your wallet today. You have a Star Trek card from when you were a kid.
yes, I never leave home without it.
What is it? It's your
A
membership
Starfleet
in
captain card.
I love it.
Yeah, just waiting to get pulled over by the police and just give that to him instead of my ID. "Sir, do you know how fast you're going?" "No." "Do you know you just pulled over?" Well,
And then you get what if you get a police officer who's a Star Trek fan? They're like, "Oh, carry on."
yeah. "Here, take my gun." Like, "Thank you." But
Okay.
yeah, I've just been fascinated by how we went from the small subculture that suddenly grew into the mainstream culture where it became cool to like nerd stuff. Where lots of people, like, you can look at any convention, comic convention, sci-fi convention. We're going to show some cosplay stuff later, but you'll see just how many beautiful people are dressed up as most obscure like anime characters and comic book characters. And it's just amazing how we got here. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of explore that and for both of us to give our thoughts on how we got here.
I I also have noticed this happening. This is probably just anecdotal for anyone who is late Gen X like we are. Or you're not technically, you're not. I'm like the end of Gen X, but aren't you a millennial?
I'm a millennial.
Oh yeah. Well, I consider you one of us. You're
Why not pass?
in your at your heart, you're Gen X. And, for people who are right on the line, it's you could go either way. Um, but this was sort of something we all witnessed happening. I was a nerd as well when I was young, although not not like I don't think you would say cultural nerd in that way. I didn't like Star Trek or things like that, but I mean, I got straight A's. I was in the band. I was a band geek. I loved soundtracks, and the kind of stuff I listened to wasn't necessarily popular, and I loved to read. And so I was picked on for that. It was sort of being, that kind of nerd. Um, I won in 8th grade. We had a yearbook. They gave us superlatives like in high school because 8th grade at that time for my small little town was we didn't have a middle school when I was there. It was like that was our elementary school. It ended at 8th grade and then you go to high school. And so they did, since it was the end of that whole school, they did superlatives, and my friend Alan and I won most intellectual, which caused lots of uh, people to make fun of me.
Where are they now?
Where are they now, right? So so that, I consider myself a nerd in that way. And then
Nerdy in
yeah,
like technical sense. Yeah, no, you're good at math, right? So you're
right, I
Asian
went
at heart, yes.
Asian at heart. Yeah, in that way. And then I did notice anecdotally when I got older, yeah, I did get into some of the nerd. I mean, I loved Doctor Who. Before after David Tennant left, I quit watching, so I kind of checked out after that. But there were shows like that that were sort of more in the nerd area that I enjoyed a lot, um, and I went to Comic Con a lot with my friends. And here's the anecdote. One of my friends in LA, he works for Mattel. He has an amazing job. He creates he comes up with he's an artist. He comes up with the action figures, like the designs and stuff. And he's such a nerd. His house is full. You know that movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, how he has like maybe 20 action figures and he's supposed to be a big nerd? I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" My friend has maybe 10,000. I mean, you can't every wall, every room is covered with bookshelves like this, and every shelf is like 6 characters deep, all
But
the
that's
way
what I'm
across.
talking about. Like that's what's so fascinating, how the stigma just was wiped away from, adults dressing up as comic book characters, collecting toys, doing LARPing. It's so weird. Just all of a sudden, that just seemed to flip
It
in
did
our
flip.
culture and just became socially acceptable.
And so he used to mention that. We used to go to Comic-Con with him in San Diego every year, and he even at that time, it had already become popular, very popular. And he was telling me he had been going since the '70s or something, and he said it didn't used to be this way. He said it used to be really, truly just comic book fans,
Hmm.
and that it was mostly comic books, and now that nerddom and nerd culture had become so popular, of course, I don't know if anybody here has been to a con, but every studio is there. They have huge booths. There's famous celebrities who come.
Yeah,
It's a real entertainment. It's a real Hollywood thing now. All the industry is there. It's sort of like how I guess something analogous would be South by Southwest in Austin,
exactly. I
which
was thinking the same thing.
used to be about the music, and now it's about the industry, and is just so popular and so expensive, and Comic-Con became that way too. And I still like going to cons. It's just it's not what he's described to me is what it used to be
Hmm.
for like the nerds and the outcasts, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities with nerd culture and goth culture, and really all subcultures. I think, because I think with like nerd culture, like back in the day, with real nerds, authentic nerds, I think a lot of them were people who felt like they were outcasts, that they were at the bottom of the hierarchy that existed in high school and even college, and they weren't looked down, or they were looked down upon, but weren't looked up as being popular or highly sought after. And I think a lot of them gravitated towards these IPs that were one, I wouldn't say counterculture, but I would say that a lot of them, maybe despite having some mainstream success, like say a Star Trek, still had that nerdy connotation that was more intelligent than say even Star Wars. And I think a lot of brainy, geeky types gravitated to, Star Trek and other things and bonded over that. They formed a kind of a community with other people who didn't quite fit in.
Mm.
And so now, given that culture is mainstream culture, I always wonder, like, the truly geeky, nerdy, socially awkward people, like, what do they coalesce around? Like, how do they form their communities? Are they as tight as they were back then? Because, we were talking about the Comic Cons. Like, I remember going to Comic Cons in the 90s, and they were nothing like they are now. Like, they were pretty, they tended to concentrate on one thing, like either concentrate on comic books or Star Trek or
Mhm.
whatever. Now it tends to be a blend. I know they still have individual Comic Cons for, say, like Star Trek or other things, but even
Mhm.
then, lots of people dress up as different characters that don't even belong to that particular IP and stuff. And so going to these
Okay.
Comic Cons, it doesn't feel as, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but it doesn't feel as tight knit, if that's not
Yeah.
the right word, but
'Cause there's so many
it's
people
missing.
at Comic-Con,
Yeah,
and they're there for all different
all
reasons.
different
Yeah.
reasons, and a lot of people who are there just, the phonies, and I know that sounds a bit very elitist, but there were a lot of people who are there because they look good in spandex and they want to show everybody, and the women who are hot, they want to dress up as bikini slave Leia and have all the guys drool after them, and it's just like,
I've seen a lot of those, yeah, the bikini slave, that's a popular costume,
yeah.
Leia. I went to a Doctor Who convention in LA once. It was small. It was at a hotel, um, like the conference room, and it was exactly what you're talking about. It was because it was specific to that one show, it was so geeky and it was so tight-knit feel it felt like the feeling of it was very tight-knit, and it was really different than Comic-Con. It was and mostly because of its size.
Hmm.
Okay. I've got a couple things you well, more than you sent me so much that we can look at. Before we start, I just wanna put one thing on the screen. Give it up for our mod, 2 sisters and some yarn. She says, "Hey, nerds. What's up, nerds?" That's what I want. "Hey, nerds. I'm so glad my man is back."
Hey, girl.
She says, "I run a TARDIS little free library in town,
Oh,
but I won't watch Doctor Who now. It's sad." Yeah. I heard it got I've seen I haven't watched it, but I've seen that it got super woke now.
yeah.
So,
Well, like I said last week, I'm done. I'm done. I just don't care anymore. I'll just watch the old stuff. Plenty of old stuff.
yeah. Okay. Oh, well, before I pull up your stuff, let me just I've got an article here. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but I think it's a nice setup to that we're gonna dive into some of the specific things you've pulled. But we're not the only ones who've noticed this, that nerd culture became cool. And this is one of many articles about it with a hypothesis about why. This one is on Medium by someone named Andrea Vokos. And the headline is Revenge of the Modern Geeks: How Nerd Culture Became Cool. The days of the beefcake action heroes are dead. The nerds have taken over. If you've watched a movie, turned on a television, or gone on the internet lately, you've probably seen nerds everywhere. They no longer serve as the punchline or the person to pick on. They're starring in their own movies and shows. Our new heroes are the Tina Feys and Michael Sarahs. Quote, "Nerd culture is on the rise," said Ben Huh, founder and CEO of Cheeseburger Inc., which includes the popular websites I Can Has Cheeseburger and Know Your Meme. Science fiction shows are becoming more popular. It's cool to have the latest electronics, and people flock to comic conventions. After so many years in the shadows, what is making nerds cool now? Although the word nerd first appeared in the Dr. Seuss book, If I Ran the Zoo. Did you know that?
Yes.
Ah, you did? Of course you
Mm-hmm.
did.
'Cause I'm a nerd. Ugh.
It was also used as a synonym for a square in a Newsweek article in 1951. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a nerd as, quote, "a person who pursues an unfashionable or highly technical interest with obsessive or exclusive dedication." A geek, however, once referred to early 20th century circus performers whose acts included biting the heads off of live chickens.
Ozzy Osbourne. One.
Similarly, the OED defines a geek as a quote, overly diligent, unsociable student, any unsociable person obsessively devoted to a particular pursuit. Biting the head off a chicken sounds disgusting, but geeks and nerds are now a desirable commodity. Jake Fogelnest, creator and writer of the 90s MTV show Squirt TV, gross, and Sirius XMU radio host, is a self described, quote, cool nerd. Quote, I obsess over music, movies, and television in a way that most people don't. I would rather stay home and watch Netflix than go out to a nightclub. By the way, honestly, I don't know who this guy is, but if you have to call yourself a cool nerd, you're probably not.
In a way, it does kind of make him nerdy because he's like, "Oh, I'm cool, I'm nerd." It's like, yeah, dork. Dork's probably more appropriate.
Dork. Fogelness has said via email, but here's the reality. I'm not a nerd. I'm also kind of cool. I've kissed girls, I own a suit, and I've been to parties.
I'm totally not gay.
The nerd stereotype used to be negative. For instance, Eugene Felsnick from the 1978 film Grease has all of the stereotypical characteristics of a nerd. He wears glasses, is puny, and gets picked on by the tough leather jacket wearing ruffians in the T-Birds. The media's perception of nerds began to change. Small strides in the world of cool nerddom were being made with films like Revenge of the Nerds and Weird Science in the early 80s. Still, in the 80s and 90s, films glamorized action heroes like Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis, and Tom Cruise. There were plenty of nerds in films and television, but they weren't cool. Steve Urkel from Family Matters, Screech from Saved by the Bell, and Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air were the butt of every joke. Stephen Keating, an MA in Media Studies and librarian of the New School Game Club, sees Steve Urkel as the mainstream perception. Quote, Steve Urkel has always been in my mind as the prototype of what a nerd is supposed to be, Keating said. The nerd transition into mainstream culture has gradually shifted, however. Nerds are now trendy. This change can be seen as early as 1990 in Edward Scissorhands, where Anthony Michael Hall, previously known for playing geeky roles, played Winona Ryder's jock boyfriend. Though Hall's character is muscular and tough, he's vilified. Instead, the cripplingly shy Edward Scissorhands is the romantic interest. Rather than serving as punching bags, the stars of films and shows in the past 10 years flaunt their nerdiness as a positive trait. Tina Fey's character Liz Lemon on 30 Rock dresses as Princess Leia to get out of jury duty and compares herself to Admiral Akbar, yet she still ends up with John Hamm and Matt Damon. It's been a slow, steady rise, says Fogelness. There were nerds on MTV in the 80s. I was a nerd on MTV in the 90s. Liz Lee was a nerd on MTV last year. Comic-Con exemplifies this new glorification of the nerd. First held in 1970 in San Diego, Comic-Con was originally a comic book convention, but now showcases films, video games, and has transformed into a Hollywood hotspot attended by celebrities like Justin Timberlake, Olivia Wilde, and Rob Lowe. Although it has the capacity to fit over 130,000 guests, it has annually sold out passes since 2007. And there's more. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I read quite a bit already. I'm just going to put this link in the chat if you want to finish reading this person's opinions on how and why this happened. But what do you think about some of that?
Well, Comic-Con, much like a lot of other conventions, sci-fi conventions, comic conventions, started off by fans. Like the people, they're basically some teenagers and 20 somethings who put Comic-Con together. And one of them actually knew Jack Kirby, one of the big artists on Marvel. And they brought him. He did it. I think he maybe even did it for free. But they also had Ray Bradbury at the first one. When you read of some of these accounts of the original Comic-Con and some of the Comic-Cons that took place afterwards, and comic conventions in general, a lot of times, a lot of these artists and guests would just come on their own. Like they'd be invited, but they wouldn't be paid for it. And so, like with Star Trek, Star Trek was a spinoff of sci-fi conventions because sci-fi conventions have been going on since the 1930s. But when Star Trek came around, there was a base of sci-fi fans who became obsessed with Star Trek. And that kind of alienated them from the traditional science fiction geeks, the ones who love the science fiction novels. And so they started calling these rabid Star Trek fans Trekkies, which is a playoff of groupies because they thought Star Trek fans were acting like groupies. And so when Star Trek spun off into its own convention, originally in 1969, but in 1972 they had some of the cast members and Gene Roddenberry, and they all came on their own volition. Like they weren't paid; they just showed up. In fact, during the letter writing campaign, the famous letter writing campaign that the Star Trek fans did after the second season of Star Trek when NBC canceled it. They wrote in to NBC's offices and flooded them with letters demanding that they put a show back on the air, which it did, and then got canceled a year later. But Gene Roddenberry actually donated quite a bit of stuff to the fans. Like he donated old clips, scripts, and other things that they sold to reimburse them for the postage because the woman who organized this sent out a bunch of envelopes to people. They were very smart, which shows how smart Star Trek fans are. But they sent out these manila envelope types of letters, and they didn't have the from sender address on there. They just had the list of the address of the person and NBC. And they knew that the person would see this and say, well, if it doesn't have an address on it and it's in this big letter sized envelope, then it must be very important. And so they were more likely to open it, which they did. And so little things like that is how they were able to save Star Trek that one time. But
Wow.
doing all that by letter and advertising and fanzines and stuff, it's amazing. And even though it's easier for people to connect now over the internet in these subgroups and subcultures, there's still something special about the connections people made just by through letters. Like when I was a kid, I had a pen pal. I found someone in a Star Trek magazine, and I think I can't remember if it's Germany or some European country, and we just talked about data and the next generation, and it was awesome. It was fun, and I
Is it
kind
a
of miss
guy
those
or
days.
girl?
It was a woman.
And you guys just bonded over Star Trek? How
Yeah,
That's so funny. The days of innocence. You're
I
like,
know. I
"Will you be
know.
my Trekkie pen pal?"
Yeah, probably was a dude.
Early
Hey,
catfishing.
yeah, I like data. Send me some pictures of yourself.
Stop it. Oh, man. Okay. So, there are people in the chat who know there are some Trekkies or Trekkers, as Alan Scott prefers, in the chat who know exactly what you're talking about. Davina, who's talking about the letter writing campaigns. So this is new for some of us, but not for others. Also, Texas Sheep Lady has a hypothesis about when and why nerds became cool. She says nerds became needed with the onset of home computers.
Yeah.
Pirate
Well,
Tomsky, who I don't see tonight, he had his own hypothesis in the last chat when I mentioned this show. He said it was when nerds started becoming billionaires.
mm,
I don't know.
I think for the because somewhat I would say, but I don't think anybody ever accepted Bill Gates as being cool.
No.
I don't think people have ever accepted Mark Zuckerberg as being cool or Bezos. Because remember, we watched that video of Bezos when Amazon first launched, like in the 90s,
Yes.
and he was so nerdy. Like he was almost likable. And he was such a dork. He's like, oh, yeah, so I
Yeah.
have this company called Amazon. Like the whole video, it was almost endearing. You're like, oh,
He was a lot more
wow.
likable then than he is
Yeah,
now.
he's
Yeah.
basically Lex Luthor, but yeah, nobody ever really thought these people were cool, and they still don't, as much as they try. And so I think a combination of factors made nerd culture. I wouldn't even say so much nerds, but no nerd culture popular. I think economic factors, certainly a lot of people delaying having families and having buying homes meant they have a lot
Mhm.
more disposable income, and I think a lot of people were continuing to their same commercial consumption habits they had as kids and teenagers that just continued on into adulthood since they weren't having kids of their own and letting those kids go through that cycle. I think cultural issues affected that. I think the decline in the overall American culture, whatever
Mhm.
you could say that was in the past, that started deteriorating along time ago, and I think popular culture kind of took its place for a while, where a lot of people defined American culture strictly by its popular culture,
Popular
and
culture.
despite popular culture in the past being heavily commercialized as it is now, I think it was more authentic, as weird as it is to say that. And I think a lot of people know this, whether they're conscious of it or not. And I think that's what fuels a great deal of nostalgia, particularly between our generations, where a lot of people are longing for the past and a time that they know will never come again. Which I once
Yeah.
read that nostalgia was a mild form of depression, which I actually do believe that. Doesn't make
Yeah.
sense because during the pandemic in 2020, with everything going on, the lockdowns were going on. You had the Black Lives Matter, burning cities, and everything. I just was, I wouldn't say depressed, but I was saddened by what was going on in the culture. And I just felt like the culture had just hit a rock
Mhm.
bottom. And if you remember, then I made a bunch of 90s pieces because I was reminiscing about the 90s and how much more healthier it was than compared to today.
You did have nostalgia. You were going and watching 90s security cam footage from Walmart and stuff, weren't you?
This is how creepy. I was like, yes. I wasn't wearing pants.
You were watching, like, video footage of people in malls in the 90s.
Yes, yes, yeah. There's a great YouTube channel, Vampire Robot, I think it's called. We showed some videos from this YouTube channel before, but they have a bunch of
Yeah,
old videos of just like people browsing Blockbuster video aisles in 1995 and stuff. And I love watching that stuff. But again, it all comes from this place of just knowing that the culture has completely been destroyed, sadly. And I think just many of us are just saddened by that. We just want to go. We want to go back to something that was more real, more authentic. And again, I'm not saying that the past was perfect, and again, it was heavily commercialized because a lot of it was built on selling merchandise and selling Cokes and Pepsis. That's been around for a very long time. But despite that, there still were a lot more authentic moments and emotions and things we felt from the various forms of entertainment that existed back then that don't exist anymore, really,
yeah,
or not to the degree it does. Not just with the political stuff, but of course, what I was saying earlier with uh, this pop culture becoming a mass culture, and with so many corporations trying to appeal to so many demographics, I think the quality of these products has greatly declined because
okay.
we're thinking about global stuff now. Because like when we were talking about architecture on the architecture episode we did a while ago, we're talking about how because of globalization and the internet and things, a lot of architecture in various parts of the world, which were once very unique compared to one another, are now starting to resemble each, and it's
Yes,
becoming very monotonous and very it's not
uniform
culturally
and
distinct as it
yeah,
used to be. And I almost feel that way with pop culture, and I think a lot of us are picking up on that in addition to the political stuff.
yeah, I agree. Couple things from the chat. Mark says, "Wait, who doesn't watch the old mall videos? It's like a warm hug."
Well, no one's getting mugged and shot, and it's great.
Justin Akinsola for 9.99. Thank you for the super chat. He says, "Does nerd culture suck now? To me, it wouldn't suck as much if it wasn't for culture vultures and posers. What do you think? Does it suck now?"
I don't think, yeah, well, yeah, short and short. I don't think it's very strong. A lot of the nerd culture stuff is built on IPs that honestly, I think a lot of them, there's not a lot of good stuff you can get from it anymore. Like we were talking last week about Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones trilogy was great, and that played a big part of my childhood and many people listening to us right now. But honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think about you can't. I don't think there's a lot of stories you can really get from Indiana Jones. And I think this last movie kind of proved that. I mean, Harrison Ford being 80 years old doesn't help. But when you have these movies, particularly with the first one, and I'll throw in the third one, these are movies that dealt with the supernatural, specifically things that were unique to Western cultural, culture with, religious or mythical um, relics and
Mm,
things that were part of the European culture, American culture, and kind of exploring that and tying that together with, the World War II Germans who represented the greatest evil ever, and that created real stakes. And how do you go from that? Like, how do you recreate that without doing the same thing over and over again?
Mhm.
Kind of like with Star Wars, because like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, kind of similar to Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. He brought back the same villains. There's a religious relic that they're searching out. That's the thing that everybody wants. But the same thing with like Star Wars, the original trilogy, with the first movie and third movie. It's kind of similar things where they had to bring back the Death Star because you have to have that stakes about this giant planet destroying machine that has to be destroyed. And that's the big thing that everybody's worried about. And so I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
meandering, but I'm like, I think there's a lot of factors into the current state of pop culture, and I think a lot of corporations who are unwilling to take chances on newer, more original properties, I think is hurting the overall pop culture um, fabric.
Mhm.
Because a lot of us who are keeping this pop culture stuff alive are people who are older and more attached to stuff from the past. But I don't think a lot of kids are embracing some of these older stuff to the degree that we embraced it, and that we are still embracing it, even if we're hate watching it. So I don't know if it's really translating it to it, because I remember watching some people who went to the Star Trek Las Vegas convention. I
Mm.
think Nerdrotic went to it a few years ago, and he made a remark about how older everybody looked than in previous years, where it seemed like Star Trek was starting to age out,
Mm.
where a lot of young people weren't watching Star Trek. I mean, I'm sure there are young people watching it, but not to the degree that there was when many of us start watching Star Trek as kids. And I don't know if that's going to be enough to really keep it alive, even if its quality, gets better. I don't know.
I don't think so. I'll make a prediction. Okay, that's a sad prediction, I'm sorry. Should I bring should I bring up this, the first link that you gave me about Star Wars?
You can. I went a little overboard with these links, and so.
I know. You tell me, let's pick the cherries here because there's a lot. What do you think is gonna be most interesting? You know I like the old news reports. The
Hmm.
audience, I think you guys like those too. It's really cool to kinda time travel and watch how people were reporting on culture back then.
Well, sure. Well, since you mentioned Star Wars, we'll start with there. So let's play this first one, and you don't have to play the whole video. I don't even remember how long it was, but this is a news report of the first Star Wars film when it first came out. They're interviewing some people coming out of theaters, and so I thought it was interesting seeing what people were like, their responses to Star Wars when it originally came out, and then we can show it. Some of the other ones, because I have news reports from basically every movie up until Phantom Menace, and then I have a Force Awakens one.
O okay, let's watch some of these nerds in 1977.
Countdown.
The people in this crowd will soon be among almost 40,000 who have seen a new science fiction movie at North Park Cinema 2.
I love the way it's called a new science fiction movie.
Star Wars? What is that?
Imagine it being new.
The movie is called Star Wars, and since it opened here 9 days ago, capacity crowds have filled the 1,100 seats in the theater almost daily. In only 9 days, Star Wars has grossed more money than any movie in Dallas history, although the manager of the theater will not yet release the exact amount of profits. Star Wars has been a good luck charm for theaters throughout the country. The movie made $2.6 million nationally during the first 3 days it played. Although lines at North Park Cinema stretched
Wow.
to more than a half-mile long and the
Wow.
movie cost $3.75 a person, no one tonight seemed to mind the crowds. Why are you waiting in such a long line to see a movie?
Well, we've just been looking forward to seeing it. We've waited about a week. We were hoping the lines had kind of diminished, but we just kind of wanted to see it tonight. We're pretty enthusiastic about space program and things along that nature.
Well, I'm a real science fiction fan. I've got hundreds of science fiction books at home, and I think this could be a
Catch
science
tail with
fiction
his
classic.
mustache.
I love all these people so far. Also, that guy had a great belt. Like, that is a man's belt. You need
I
a
didn't even
leather
notice
belt.
that.
Yeah, you need a leather belt. It needs to be real leather. It needs to have a good, strong-looking buckle. He had a man's belt.
But nobody's dressed up as a Star Wars character.
Not yet. This is before all that stuff.
Yet.
The distributors of the family science fiction movie, 20th Century Fox, have been near the top of the New York Stock Exchange during the past week because of Star Wars box office success. If the movie continues to draw the crowds and money it has during these early weeks, the North Park theater manager says Star Wars will go on to break all existing motion picture records. Karen Parfit, The Texas News.
Okay, that was cool.
Yeah. And so I had some other ones. Maybe which one are you going to? Do you want to?
The news coverage?
Yeah. Do you want to share the Phantom Menace one?
Let's see. Phantom Menace. Fan
Yes.
reactions?
Yes. So this is when Phantom Menace, and this was before people knew it was awful, but it was fun to see the excitement because I remember the hype. It was like nothing else. I remember like all the people who were trying to download it with dial-up. It was like taking several hours just to get like a minute and a half trailer. Such times.
1999.
This is a huge deal for me. I was sick from school today.
I want to be the guy coming out of the theater going, it was great. You know, that's who I want to be.
I thought there was going to be people here already, and it turned out there wasn't being. I was like, wow, I'm the first one.
Well, it's Star Wars. It's like the original trilogy was just so phenomenal. People have been awaiting this for like 16 years.
It's grabbing history and maybe going with it and becoming part of it and giving a story to our children.
It's going to be one of the many wonders of the world. There are now 8 wonders of the world. One of
all these poor people, they don't know. They don't know yet. They don't know.
Watching video of people getting on the Hindenburg, like no,
don't get on the Titanic. This is gonna be great. It's the fastest boat ever built. No,
nothing bad will ever happen to the ship.
It's the unsinkable ship.
them being this movie.
We've been waiting since the last one came out for 16 years. So this is a big thing. I mean, we've been waiting a long time. It's time to get back into it. It's the event of the whole thing.
I've been waiting 15 years since Return of the Jedi came out to see the prequel.
There's no way it's going to be a disappointment.
Are there any of you that think this is going to be a lousy movie?
Oh no!
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
It's so sad and funny. It's so sad.
Oh, I was like that too. Oh.
You were there's no way
so
you thought it was
excited.
going to be lousy, right? You're like, no,
Yeah, I thought it was
no
gonna be
way.
awesome. And I remember walking on the movie trying to convince myself it was a better movie than it actually was. I was like, well, with that cool lightsabers in it, Darth Maul's cool.
Jar Jar, no. The faith is strong, it will be tested. Hey, what's up, Duke Devil 95? Face palm. Okay, I gotta see the rest of this because this was just sad and it's just sad and funny.
I feel like, I don't know, like it's exciting. It's going to be going to the first show of like Phantom Menace, and I don't know. That's all I can say. Thanks.
10 loved it, 7 liked it or thought it was okay, and 2 are no longer Star Wars fans.
Fantastic. Go see it as quick as you can.
Better than old.
I think the lightsaber battles were the greatest.
It was good, dude. It was really good.
So worth it. So worth it.
They're going to love it. They're going to go nuts. It was amazing.
I couldn't get enough of it. I want to see it again already.
It was amazing. It was everything I thought it was going to be and more.
Non-stop.
Let me
I
ask
want
you
to
a
see if
question.
these people's opinions changed.
I agree. Because I was going to ask you your opinion on what's happening here. 8 of them liked it, 2 hated it, or 6 loved it, 2 liked it. What was that? And only 2 hated it, basically, out of 10. What do you think's happening there? Because I suspect it's that kind of denial, that initial denial that you go through when something is so crushing,
Mhm.
and you don't wanna accept it quite yet because you've invested so much into it
Yeah.
psychologically, and so you have to be like, "Oh, it's great, everything's great here, this is fine," like the meme of the house on fire and the dog is drinking coffee, like, "This is fine!" And then I think it probably settled in. What do you think?
No, I think you're right. And like I was saying about myself, I remember trying to convince myself that the movie was actually good, but it took some time for me to really digest it and realize that it was awful. And certainly with the movies that came afterwards, and even some of the critics, listening, Red Letter Media, they had a big influence on people really identifying what didn't quite work about these movies, because a lot of people, myself included, saw these movies, knew there were aspects that didn't work, but maybe didn't quite know why or how to
Mhm.
articulate that. And I think as we moved into this digital online space where you had a lot of cultural critiquers who were able to break things down, I think people were became a little bit more critical and were able to identify some of
Yeah.
the things that just didn't work, and seeing stuff happening behind the scenes with like the video of George Lucas having a bunch of yes men around him, and even their their reactions to the movie wasn't good. Like, if you ever seen that classic clip
Mhm.
where he shows it to some of the people, producers and other people in Lucasfilm, and the lights go on and everyone's just silent, and they're all like looking at George, and George is like, "Oh, well, maybe there were some things maybe we could have done a little better."
We could've done
Yeah, and I was just so afraid to say, like, ugh, yeah.
To continue with your Titanic analogy, it's sort of like in the dramatic, version of, the famous Titanic movie. It's sort of like when they hit the iceberg and at first they're like, "This is fine." This is cool. It's gonna be great. Thank you for the super chat. Justin Akinsola for $1.99 says, "Y'all bogus," with laughing faces. Thank you, sir. Share our laughter with us. Okay. We should we continue with this one? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't wait to see it in 3 hours. I'll be lining up straight in the line again.
A lot of action, a lot of noise. It was cool.
I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, it's really good, must say. I think it's going to be the hugest thing. The hugest thing.
It was intense. It was incredible. I loved it. It was awesome.
We got tickets for the 9 a.m. show. We're going to stick around and see it again.
I thought it was better than Return of the Jedi, personally. So,
Wow.
I like the special effects. I thought Lucas did a really good job.
I think that little Anakin Skywalker, and everyone's going to say it, stole that movie.
thumbs up or thumbs down?
God, I'd put my feet up if I could.
It's fantastic. Good special effects, good story. Lives up to the originals.
A very good movie. I believe the kids are going to love it.
It is worth every minute of it. We've waited 16 years for this moment. An unbiased opinion, how was the film?
I'd give it a definite thumbs up.
It was like new because all the guys were new and you didn't really know how everything fit together before.
So intense. I mean, my heart was beating. It's still beating now. And I just screamed, literally.
What do you think, Cole? With the white?
Yeah.
And who's your favorite?
Darth Maul.
Pandemonium. Everybody was out there just screaming, yelling.
Cha cha.
Have you seen this all the way through?
Yes.
Do they get to people who didn't like it?
I don't remember.
I'm
We're running.
curious.
I know. I don't know. It's only 50 more seconds.
Here.
Ellen, when Lucasfilm logo came up and 20th Century Fox came up, that was the best.
I like Darth Vader.
He's a little kid. Do you want to marry him?
What?
You want to marry him?
Oh God.
You don't want to marry him?
It'll be
a great movie 20 years from now. I think it was an excellent movie. I think Mr. Lucas did a fabulous job, special effects.
That long-eared alien dude, I mean, he always messed up, but he ended up helping his army and stuff. I thought it was pretty good.
Thumbs way down.
Oh.
There's one guy.
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
And so it began.
The first cheek in the armor. That guy's like, I'm not afraid to have an unpopular opinion. Unpopular at the time. Don't worry, people will catch on.
I mean, I'm not surprised that kids like it, because as weird it is for like old timers like myself, there were kids who grew up, that was their first Star
Yeah.
Wars movie, and so a lot of them that is Star Wars, and they love that. And so, hey, if you love it, okay. I don't, but same thing with Star Trek. Some of these people, their first Star Trek series was Star Trek Discovery. I think it was horrible, but there are people who love it, and so I'm like, well, okay, well, don't understand how, but hey, we all like bad things. I love RoboCop too, so whatever.
You love RoboCop too.
I love it. I'm gonna
Should,
bring that up every episode.
should we watch any more of the Star Wars stuff?
If you want to briefly show a little bit of Force Awakens, don't watch the whole thing. But
I want to show you this baby here on the right. It clearly did not like the movie. Look at that baby's face.
What the hell did I just watch?
The mom's like, "This was great," and the baby's like, "What you talking about?"
What you talking about, Mama?
Okay, which part should I play of this?
Just skip. I don't know, find a part. I should have time marked it, but whatever.
Let's watch this woman and the baby, the displeased baby.
Tradition was born.
And I ended up meeting my husband in line.
And this is the result?
This is the result.
Nate's been in line over a week already.
Wow.
When that Star Wars comes up on the screen, it's a little kid inside me says, is this really happening?
If there's a center of the universe in Star Wars, a glorious nerddom, it's right here.
Now, these nerds, that's their word, not mine, are also raising money for the Starlight Children's Charity. It's a sponsored wait on the sidewalk. They're getting sponsored by the hour.
But you notice a lot more people dressed up there than in previous
Yes.
years. It got more and more and more. And like I was saying earlier with architecture, I think the internet and globalization also influenced people's desire to dress up as things. Because I was looking at the Comic-Con statistics, and Comic-Con had a attendance of about 42,000 people in the year 2000, and then by 2010 it had over 100,000. And so
It's something
obviously what
happened.
changed there was the internet, and especially once you get to 2008, 2012-ish period, that period, I think in particular, is when it really launched, because you saw the launch of Twitter and Instagram and other social media networks, and then you saw the Marvel movies. They were actually good. With Iron Man came out, and that led up to the Avengers in 2012. And so I think that was just a perfect storm that created a larger fandom and more people who gravitated towards things, especially having these superhero movies that had actually good special effects in it. That
Yeah.
was same thing, a science fiction thing, because I think one of the things that allowed adults to gravitate toward these things and embrace them more was the special effects and the production values, the way they were done, getting better and better, making it more serious and not as cheesy and childlike. And I think it just became cooler for adults to like that in addition to kids.
You said something there about the internet, which made me think this may be an unpopular opinion, but do you think, or an unpopular question, actually, because I don't know, but do you think that as society, like culturally, we are in a decline, which I think you agree with, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And as society has declined, as culture has declined, as people have moved away from things that I think really give life meaning, actual meaning and purpose, that people have started looking for meaning and purpose and identity, especially identity elsewhere. And do you think there's anything to this idea? I read an article once, man, I should have pulled that one up for this show. I just didn't think of it. But it was about how some people go beyond nerddom, to go beyond being a big nerd about a certain property, like Star Trek, for example, and they start to create their identity based on that, of that piece of pop culture, and they start to base like who they are around this, whether it's Doctor Who or Star Trek or whatever the comic book they're really into, do you think there's anything to that's why it's become more popular, is that there's more people searching for belonging and identity and meaning and community, and it gives you that sense of community if you're like, this is who I am. I am a Doctor Who fan, right?
I totally believe that. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, with the economic factors of a lot of people just not having families. I mean, having kids for a lot of people, not for everyone, but having kids for a lot of people does provide their lives with meaning. It gives them a purpose and something to drive to. And without that, a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people have a hole in them, and so they're looking for meaning elsewhere. And combine that with the failing social institutions that we've been witnessing decline over several generations. Or I think that has all contributed to these people seeking out, like you said,
Belonging.
belonging, and
Identity.
trying to form new identities. I think people are seeking out uniqueness. I think that was always kind of a part of nerd culture, was seeking out things that were under the mainstream or counterculture, and by
Yes.
embracing those things, it kind of made the person unique because it was unique. It wasn't embraced by the popular mass culture. And now that it is mass, I don't know if people are still trying to find things that are unique. Like I don't really watch anime, but I always wonder if some anime fans are always trying to find the newest, most obscure anime to watch and talk about and obsess about. That kind of aids in their definition of their own uniqueness. And it's almost like hipsters, which I don't even know if hipsters are a thing anymore, but you remember hipsters and their love affair with quote unquote indie music, and how many hipsters would try to find the most unheard of band that they could say, oh, this band's a great band, and people are just too dumb. They just don't get this music. But once that band becomes popular, they dump it and just try to move on to the next thing
Yes.
because that's part of their identity. So I think,
I
like
went
I said, all subcultures, I think, have an element of that to it.
I went through this with Doctor Who. I was so obsessed with Doctor Who for a time. I went beyond, like I said, I went to the Doctor Who convention. I was like, but I went beyond just being a really big fan into this is how I know. This is how I know anyway. You may have a different yardstick for how you decide this. But at one point I seriously considered and was going to get a TARDIS tattooed on my arm. And to me, that if I look back on that now, I'm so glad my ex-husband talked me out of it. But if I look back on that now, which seems ludicrous to me, I think at the time that was the closest thing I had to who I am. Is that sad? It's like,
Yeah.
I like Doctor Who
Yeah.
so much I got it tattooed on me. Like, oh, so what? So you like Doctor Who? I don't know. And
No, because we don't have a real culture. We just have
yeah.
pop culture that's kind of taking the place of it, but even that's been destroyed. So
Yeah. Okay, I've got something from the chat here. For you, Duke Devil 95 says, "No, Chris, no."
I don't consider it Star Trek either, but it has the label on it. It's owned by CBS. I unfortunately have to include it. I hate that show so much.
He says its initials are STD.
Yeah.
Which is so accurate. Okay.
I do my best to try to forget about it, but I can't. I see it every time I close my eyes. And that's a good segue. Do you want to talk a little bit about Star Trek?
Let's do it. Which one of these? I mean, now you gave me the most links, obviously.
Of course.
For Star Trek.
But let's play just a little bit of a video from a Star Trek convention in 1973, just to give a sense of what Star Trek conventions were like back in the 70s.
This one's going to be so interesting. For me, anyway. What was it like in 1973? Okay. Should I start at the beginning or where?
Yeah. Don't play the whole thing, but just a little bit of it.
You guys, this is a Star Trek convention, New York City, 1973, it's called.
10, 9, 8. This is Michelle Malcolm. She is in the Star Trek competition as Stella from Journey to Babel.
My name is Lori Dale.
No, I mean you're out.
Oh, I am a Denebian Prime Devil. We have very large houses on Troy, especially in the upper class, which I belong to, and you have to clean them by yourself.
There are two classes of people. There's your monocolored, and then there's your duocolored. I'm Ambassador X from Ecosystem 4, and Star Trek convention.
Okay, let me just say this is
carrot sticking out of his head.
It looks like a lobster. This to me, okay, this is before being a nerd was cool. So these guys were actually counterculture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Star Trek fandom was always different than Star Wars, because I don't think there was much of a stigma attached to liking Star Wars. Now, if you dressed up as a Jedi, there was, But with Star Trek, just liking Star Trek, there was a stigma. Like people automatically assumed you were a nerd because you liked Star Trek, even if you never wore a Starfleet uniform.
He's not kosher. Look at the luster.
I've been viewing it on a monitor on my planet. Star Trek lives because there are a lot of people who respect good science fiction.
For about 3 years.
You know, you can't help but love them.
Yeah. And again, a lot of these things were put on by fans, organized by fans. And one of the a lot of these things were put on by fans. And one of the interesting things there too that kind of goes counter to the stereotype of Star Trek fan is there were a lot of women there. And the Star Trek conventions I've been to, there have been a lot of women. In fact, the last one I went to, which a few years ago, William Shatner was there, and he took questions. People would get up and say their questions to him. And the majority of people who got up and said things to him were women. And they all had the same story, that they grew up watching Star Trek with their fathers. And that's why they love Star Trek so much. And I always thought that was really fascinating to think about how many women love Star Trek.
It's the same with Star Wars. I saw my friend Deb Philman of The Reason We Learn. She shared a post from a woman recently that said, I'm really sick of this new narratives they're trying to spin currently about Star Wars and how they need a woman at the helm, like they haven't had one. We need a woman at the helm. We need to tell stories that appeal to women. It's like she's like, Star Wars has always appealed to women. There have always been women in the audience, and quit erasing us.
Yeah.
It's condescending. Is this Hunter S. Thompson? Who is this? This guy up here?
I don't know. Colonel Klink?
Okay, let's go.
It was done with
a studio exec.
Gene Roddenberry had a tremendous penchant for detail. It had authenticity. It had relevance. Even when he did a show with monsters, they were properly motivated. And it was, in a sense, it was television's version of
TV series. And the night of the pilot, of course, I went crazy. And the day after, I started pestering my friends. We're starting a club now.
We'd like to see Star Trek back on the air because it was the first serious science fiction program on television. Before that time, there were several minor kiddie programs, but nothing that dealt with science fiction as it truly is. Speculative fiction, thoughts about the future, thoughts that would incorporate a true possible harmony with the entire world.
Listen to how well spoken they are.
Yeah. Yeah, they like Star Trek.
And for the entire galaxy.
They speak about the mission of the Enterprise being to boldly go, a split infinitive I heard every single time, to boldly go where no man has ever gone before. They mean it primarily, I suppose, in territorially. They're visiting stars that no man has till then ever visited. They're going through vast distances no man has ever penetrated. But in addition, they're meeting problems that man has not faced. Star Trek really presented was the brotherhood of intelligence. It mattered not what form the intelligence took or what kind of universe the intelligence built for it. If it was intelligent, if it was intelligent enough to build a culture, then it had the right to live in that culture, especially in a world like ours.
I think it's the extreme logic of the character. It's something along the lines of perhaps a future evolution of mankind.
I think everybody would like to be cool, would like to be able to hide their emotions because it makes them, I don't know, it makes them superior to be able to hide everything from a person. I thought it was rather intriguing the way they handled it.
No matter how successful.
I like hearing from the fans. That's why I'm skipping through him.
What does this guy have to say? Who is he? No, I'm joking. But yeah, one of the great things about Star Trek is there are a lot of writers. I don't think Asimov ever wrote an episode, but there are a lot of other classic science fiction authors that wrote or at least inspired stories featured in the original Star Trek series. And that's one of the big things that differentiate it from what's coming out today and how dumbed down and unintelligent it is. I really wish the modern producers would source current science fiction writers for stories and to help craft these productions. And I think they'd be so much better. You can still do stuff that is more quote unquote grainy and still appeal to a large number of people, because as we'll see with some of these videos, what I wanted to show with Star Trek, despite having that nerdy connotation to it, it did get quite big. I would say Star Trek reached its peak in the 90s, but as you see, like if you want to pull up this video of this NASA recruitment video that came out in 1977 with Nichelle Nichols, if I think you might know, but a lot of people know that the prototype for the space shuttle was named Enterprise after the Star Trek Enterprise. And Star Trek had a huge influence on a number of astronauts and engineers and scientists. This is what I was talking about last week, about how Star Trek is all about entertaining the idea of achieving the impossible. I mean, that's what drove a lot of technological innovation. And that's the thing that I think so many of us got at a very young age, instinctively. And that's what I've always loved about seeing that progression, especially of technology. It's very much more optimistic view of technology compared to other science fiction, because it featured a future in which technology brought about the best in humankind instead of the
Yes.
worst. But we live in a reality where it does both, but it's hard at times to see how technology brings out the best, because there's so much terrible things technology is bringing out of people today, and that kind of overshadows some of the good stuff. But certainly Star Trek had a much more rosier view of technology and its influence on human
A positive
development.
view. Duke Devil 95 again, for you, Chris, says Chris is totally on point. Original Trek writers understood sci-fi and literature. Now these writers write Trek based on their own sensibilities and seeing themselves.
I have an article to piggyback on that, but just to show a little bit of this, just a little bit, and then I want to bring up the article, and then we'll go back to videos.
Okay.
Strong interference on subspace, Captain. Planet must be a natural radio source.
Hi, I'm Nichelle Nichols, but I still feel a little bit like Lieutenant Uhura on the Starship Enterprise. You know, now there's a 20th century Enterprise, an actual space vehicle built by NASA and designed to put us in the business of space, not merely space exploration. Now, NASA's Enterprise is a space shuttle built to make regularly scheduled runs into space and back, just like a commercial airline. The shuttle may even be used to build a space station in orbit around the Earth. And this would require the services of people with a variety of skills and qualifications. Average good health is required, and candidates will train right here at Johnson Space Center, just outside Houston, Texas. Astronaut Alan Bean has agreed to show me some of the training and evaluation that new astronaut candidates will be undergoing.
During the Apollo program.
Apollo, right?
Apollo, I flew on Apollo 12, and I flew on
Skylab, too.
You know a lot.
I know a lot about you, Alan Bean.
This whole
We don't play more. I just want to show a
is
little
not
bit of
just
that. But
controlling space missions. We got
Mae
engineers that
Jemison,
work in developing.
the first Black woman in space, says she was inspired by Nichelle Nichols to become an astronaut, and she was actually on or in an episode of Star Trek: Next Generation.
Wow. See, here's what I want to point out. Back then, with that advertisement, excuse me, they're appealing to our common humanity. You've got Nichelle Nichols there, a Black woman, talking about why you should join NASA. But they didn't have to make a big deal about the fact that she's a woman or that she's Black. They didn't have to sell it like that. And now, that was in the 70s. Now, flash forward to almost 50 years later, and they are pretending like there have never been Black astronauts or female astronauts, and this is where we are in the 2020s, okay, where NASA has launched this mission equity thing where they're saying, here it is, the space agency launched its Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities in NASA programs. And sharing a video of staffers of varying racial backgrounds delivering the new inclusive message. What is new about it? What is new? You have this commercial from 1977. And then here, listen to at NASA, we're on a mission of equity. Ugh, well, that's terrible. Launching opportunity to reach those we've never reached before. You've never reached them before? Really? Are you just going to erase all the astronauts who you claim to be trying to reach? You're just going to erase them if they happen to be women or black, or you're just going to be, no, you've never been here before. The agency says it wants to reach those who are Black, Latino, and Indigenous and Native American persons, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, and other persons of color, as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ plus persons. It's also seeking members of religious minorities, people with disabilities, and persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality. All they left out was fat people.
Get the aliens just come and destroy us already.
Yeah. I just had to bring that up just to put it in context of it's so cool to see that old advertisement where they don't have to make they're just inclusive. Actually, they don't have to say we're being inclusive.
Racism bad.
Right. Doc Savage, real quick. Thank you, Doc Savage, for hanging out with us tonight.
Hello.
Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Carrie. Hey, Chris. Here's to the cause. Thank you very much. $5 super chat. Blackety black astronaut.
There's a video. We'll have to play it on another episode. It's a parody about a black NASA. It's pretty funny. But can you bring up this article on Mary Sue? So I'm just going to read a few paragraphs on this. And this, we've talked about the term Mary Sue. You've talked about it on the show. Well, it originally came from a Star Trek fan fiction story. That's where it all originated. Yeah. And so it's the woman who coined the term Mary Sue. This is on the Smithsonian site. And I'm going to skip around, but I'm going to start it soon after. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to read these couple of paragraphs, and I'm going to skip a few paragraphs now. So soon after Paula Smith and Sharon Ferraro launched one of the earliest Star Trek fanzines, they started noticing a pattern to the submissions they were receiving. Each began the same way. A young woman would board the Starship Enterprise, and quote unquote, she would and because she was just so sweet and good and beautiful and cute, Smith recounts, everybody would just fall all over her. Looking back, Smith says, it was obvious what was going on. They were simply placeholder fantasies, she says. And certainly I can't say I didn't have a placeholder fantasies of my own. But the thing that had attracted the two friends to Star Trek was the show, which had gone off the air for good in 1969, 4 years before they launched their zine, was intelligent. These submissions, says Smith, were not intelligent. I'm going to skip down a few paragraphs, about 5 paragraphs, to when Smith and Ferraro founded Menagerie. When Smith and Ferraro founded Menagerie, the culture of fan-made publication was a powerful force within science fiction fan community. The fan scene had actually been born out of the sci-fi scene. The Science Fiction Correspondence Club in Chicago is credited with producing the first fan mag back in 1930, and later on it was a sci-fi fan who coined the term fanzine. In the pre-internet days, these fanzines, or zines for short, made for and by fans, became instrumental in growing fandoms and spreading ideas like the Mary Sue across the country and even around the world. For almost 40 years, for almost 40 years, fanzines were the net, the cement which kept fandom together as an entity. Longtime sci-fi fan zine writer Don Fitch reflected in 1998. It helped, too, that Smith and Ferraro were active members of the Star Trek community when they launched Menagerie in 1973. Though nearly 4 decades have passed since they edited the final issue, both can still vividly recall the submission that inspired Mary Sue. The piece, which came in at 80 pages, double-sided, centered around a young protagonist who was, of course, brilliant and beautiful and ultimately proved her mental Mito, how do you pronounce it?
Metal.
Metal, by sacrificing her own life to save the crew. A tragic moment, which was then upended and resurrected herself. I'd never seen that one before.
So she's Jesus, basically.
I'd never seen that one anywhere else, Smith says with a laugh. So I have to give the writer kudos for that. Smith, a big Mad magazine fan, couldn't resist writing a concise, biting parody in response. Gee golly gosh, Gorski, it began, written from the viewpoint of the youngest lieutenant ever in the history of the Federation, a 15-and-a-half-year-old half-Vulcan named Mary Sue. Immediately upon coming aboard the USS Enterprise, Mary Sue catches the eye of debonair Captain Kirk, who confesses his love to her and propositions a bedroom rendezvous. After she turns him down, scandalized, quote unquote, Captain, I am not that kind of girl, Kirk immediately walks back the suggestion. You're right, and I respect you for it, before tapping her to watch over the ship as he fetches them coffee. Next, she encounters Mr. Spock, the Vulcan science officer, who asks why she's sitting in the captain's chair. Once she explains herself, Spock calls the decision flawlessly logical. A Trekkie's Tale, which Smith published anonymously in Menagerie number 2, concludes after Mary Sue dies her heroic death. Afterward, Smith writes, the entire crew weeps unashamedly at the loss of her beautiful youth and youthful beauty, intelligence, capability, and all-around niceness. For good measure, the Enterprise turns her birthday into a national holiday on the ship. Quote, I wanted to write the complete sort of Mary Sue that there was because they were all alike, says Smith. It was just so typical that it just had to be done.
Okay, this is amazing because basically what I've learned, thank you for sharing this with me, because I didn't know this is where the term Mary Sue was coined to describe this kind of female character being inserted into action, action movies, comic books, sci-fi properties. I didn't know this is where it came from, but this makes so much sense because it says these two women coined the term and wrote this bit of satire making fun of this writing style, this character type, after receiving so many of these kind of stories from women who were writing fan fiction, which makes so much sense. What was it they called it at the beginning? They called it a fantasy insert, where you insert yourself in like a self-insert. Yeah, a placeholder fantasy, they called it. That's what a lot of fanfic is. That's what romance novels are. Have you read the kind of stuff that women read and write? For the most part, on average, I know they're obviously, look, if you're a woman who doesn't fit in with the average, then you're smart enough to know what averages are and what a bell curve is and how you are an outlier. But on average, the kind of stuff that women read and the kind of stuff that women write tends to be this sort of romance-centered, self-insert fanfic, this sort of fantasy-based thing of, you're the perfect woman, the perfect girl, and you're intelligent and beautiful, and you can do everything, and everyone acknowledges it, and that's what romance novels are. Have you read a romance novel, Mr. Jones?
No, but I dated a girl who was she was super feminist, but she worked at a place where she had to edit these fan submitted romance novels, and she would always come home very depressed because she'd talk about how these women were basically not only putting themselves in it, but they were subjecting themselves to like all sorts of abuse. And it was like this weird, kinky sexual thing that, obviously violated, this girl's the girl I was dating, or sensibilities, feminist sensibilities. But yeah, from everything I've heard about them, they sound really bad.
It's basically like, look, this person, Scott Miller. Hey, Scott Miller nails it in chat. We used to mock such writing. Now we greenlight massive budgets for it. Basically, they have people writing who should be writing fanfic, erotica and stuff. They have them writing for the studios now and putting all these Mary Sues in there. And it's like, no, there's a time and place for that. I mean, I've read fanfic, I've read erotica and stuff like that, but that's not, I don't want to see that in a movie. That's like junk food. It's not a quality character. There's a place for it. It's not on the big screen. That's what I'm
No.
saying. Does this make sense?
It does. It does. Let's play one more video for Star Trek because we still got some other stuff to go through and we don't want to be here too long.
Okay.
So this last video, can you play that Barbara Adams clip? So for people who don't remember, Barbara Adams was this woman. I think she's still alive. But she was a woman who decided to wear a Starfleet uniform to jury duty, and this became a national story. Like
what?
Sign of the times back in the late 90s when everyone was talking about this. And so I just want to play a little bit. I queued it up at that point, so just a little bit.
Who's appeared in court every day for the Whitewater trial wearing a Star Trek uniform has been dismissed from the case. The problem was apparently not Barbara Adams' maroon and black Starfleet uniform, but rather a television interview she gave a tabloid TV show. That interview violated the judge's prime directive, no talking to the media. Adams told American Journal she wore the uniform because she finds Star Trek an alternative to mindless television because it promotes peace and faith in mankind. 2 jurors have been dismissed.
There we go.
That lady is a total nerd, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
But yeah, that was basically at the end of Star Trek's peak because Star Trek in the 80s with the movies, the Next Generation were huge. Next Generation was pulling in 10 million viewers a night every episode. The movies, most of them, were doing pretty well. Shatner hosted Saturday Night Live. We don't have time to play the news clip about that, but the infamous Get a Life skit where he's playing himself and he's at a convention and all these Star Trek nerds are asking him, like, in episode 53, when you were messing with the phaser rifles, do you remember what setting? If it and he's like, no, get a life. And that apparently rubbed some fans the wrong way. I mean, that's stupid. Don't get upset about that. I mean, we should be able to poke fun at ourselves. But Patrick Stewart ended up hosting Saturday Night Live in the mid-90s. Both he and William Shatner were on the cover of Time magazine. Star Trek was really breaking through into the mainstream and really dominating the pop culture. It had a huge influence on pop culture despite its kind of nerdy stigma. But then Voyager happened and Enterprise happened. Enterprise gets canceled. Then they reboot it with J.J. Abrams. And yeah, the rest everybody knows. But yeah, Star Trek had its heyday. And despite being more popular in the past than it is now, the stigma for liking Star Trek is, I would say, gone. As weird as that is.
It is.
Yeah.
A couple things from the chat. Texas Sheep Lady about fanfic and erotica says, I'm not sure there is a place for it. You're probably right. I haven't read any of that stuff in years. I do consider it to be it's like porn, but for women. It's the main type of porn women consume is romance novels. So, yeah, you're probably right. Super Based. What's up, dude? Thank you for gifting 5 Deprogrammed memberships. You are the Deprogrammed memberships fairy. Doc Savage, how come nobody's talking about the lack of diversity in the color purple? It's true. Okay.
Let's see. Do you want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes, do I?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So I actually meant to bring this up on our Satanic Panic episode, but we didn't have time. So I thought now would be a good time to bring some of this up. So if you want to bring up this first link, which is a video to a 60 Minutes piece that came out in 1985. So as Dungeons and Dragons started to become more and more popular, this tabletop gaming for people who like fantasy, medieval fantasy stuff, as it became more and more popular, more and more concerns about it being supposedly satanic and evil and about demon worshiping started to rise.
I remember this.
Yeah, that just made it more popular
Yeah.
amongst people. And so a lot of news organizations did pieces on it, and this is 60 Minutes piece, and let's just play a little bit of it. I mean, we got a lot of other stuff to go through, but
they were really against. I just remember the 80s it being sort of the don't watch the Smurfs. They said the Smurfs was about devil worship and communism, and don't play Dungeons and Dragons because it's evil. So this is going to be exciting. Let's watch it.
D&D, and it's
become popular with children anywhere from grammar school on up. Not so with a lot of adults who think it's been connected to a number of suicides and murders. The idea of the game, which is played by highly imaginative and intelligent kids, is to assume the role of one of the characters. One game can go on for weeks or even months. The problem seems to be that some kids take it more seriously than others, take it a step further, playing a character who brings them the power in a game they couldn't possibly get in real life.
About 2 months ago.
Like a man becoming a woman? Couldn't possibly happen in real life. I'm just curious. Okay.
A green eyeball was seen up in the sky. This eyeball was so big it blotted out the sun, okay?
These young people are playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's an enormously complicated game in which each player chooses an imaginary character he'll assume. There are dwarfs, knights and thieves, gods and devils, magic and spells. It's a journey into a land of fantasy through complicated mazes where you use your wits to kill your enemies before they kill you, all in a quest for wealth and power. The Dungeon Master orchestrates and referees the game, creating scenarios both complicated and terrifying. There is no board, only the dice.
I've never seen dice like this. All different sides.
Six-sided.
What's the point in that?
Six-sided? These are evil dice.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Don't you think there's a little bit of an implication in the way he's asking? I've never seen dice like these. That's 6 sides to them? How many dice?
It's never existed before. 6-sided dice? What?
They're for different things. The 4-sided is used mainly for damage from a dagger and dart, and magic users' hit points. Hit points is the damage that you can take before you die.
There are those who are fearful that the game in the hands of vulnerable kids could do harm, and there is evidence that seems to support that view. Timothy Grice, 21, shotgun suicide. The detective report noted, D&D became a reality. Irving Bink Pulling, 16, an avid D&D player, a suicide. Daniel and Stephen Irwin, 16 and 12, a murder and a suicide. The police said they were obsessed with the game. James Allen Kirby, 14 years old, charged with killing his junior high school principal and wounding 3 other people. Police are blaming D&D. Jeffrey Jaklovich, 14. Stephen Lloyd Cano, 16. Michael.
Wow.
Yes. Dungeons and Dragons and really tabletop gaming has become huge as well, in addition to video games. And I'm actually shocked at how popular tabletop gaming has become, because I go to comic shops here and there, and a lot of them will have basically Friday and Saturday nights where it will be packed of people just playing tabletop games.
There's a coffee shop in Georgetown. I can't remember the real name because we call it Jesus Coffee. It's the Christian coffee shop. Oh man, what is that called? If anybody wants to go, Just Love Coffee or something like that. Anyway, it's Christian owned, and there are people always playing Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop gamers there. And like it's and that's a novelty for seeing that for me now in a cafe. I don't see it in other cafes.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting. Have you looked up any of these cases?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. Look, I mean, some of it I've forgotten, but yeah, I did research some of that stuff, and a lot of times it's just very not strong evidence. I mean, obviously they're trying to say that these people were inspired by the game, but I don't believe that. A lot of these people already had issues before this game, and some of them weren't even that hardcore players of the game. So I don't think this introduced the idea of self-deletion for a lot of these people, but using it as a scapegoat was what many people were doing at time to everything, TV, music. And like I said in that episode, this stuff does have an influence on people's perceptions and values, but I don't think when it comes to something as major as that, I don't think these things have as big of an influence as people were saying back then, and maybe some people are saying now. I think people who are in that place, who are willing to do that kind of thing, already have deeper issues. And I think when it comes to, say, sex, though, I do think pop culture stuff does have a very great influence on the values we have regarding those things. But when it comes to something as serious as what they were talking about, I don't buy that.
I think I'm mostly with you. It reminds me of the episode where we watched the local news clip where the woman was blaming Beavis and Butthead for her 5-year-old setting fire to the house. And it was sort of like, well, why are you letting your 5-year-old watch Beavis and Butthead in the first place? That's my first question. But yeah, I think there's this desire to scapegoat entertainment choices. We saw a lot of that in the 80s and 90s, and people blaming heavy metal music for things as well. And I think that there's something wrong that's deeper than in the entertainment choice in most cases, where if excuse me, for someone who's going to commit a murder or suicide, that there's something deeper happening there. And if it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons that they became obsessed with, it would be something else. So I don't know. That's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah. Real quick, can you bring up this clip from Mazes and Monsters and just show a little bit of it? It's a TV movie, but just in case, we'll just show a few seconds and skip around. But so this movie was a movie that came out in the early 80s that was an anti-Dungeons and Dragons movie. And it features a young Tom Hanks in his first movie role, who plays a guy who becomes so obsessed with playing this game called Mazes and Monsters, not Dungeons and Dragons, of course, that he starts to believe he's in the game. He starts to hallucinate and see these monsters everywhere. And so he's basically going around New York, seeing monsters, as his friends and family keep finding him, but he thinks they're monsters, so he runs away from them. And this is the very end of it. And again, just skip a little bit and we'll just play a bit of it.
Skip ahead.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah. And
look right there.
Yeah, I think that's good.
What are you doing? Going to join the Great Hall. You can't. It's a trap. I have spells. I'm going to fly. You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
Just pause it a little bit. I think we'll be fine, but just pause it just in case.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mazeka.
Oh, so we don't get a strike?
Yeah, just in case. But
I saw people in the chat were posting a second ago. It's a trap.
This is probably Tom Hanks' best moment in any movie he's ever done coming up.
I don't know though. Are you the one that introduced me to Bosom Buddies?
No.
Okay. Do you know what that is?
Of course.
Okay. Somebody showed me that. I had never seen that until the past couple years. I thought it was you. You're always the one that shows me weird pop culture. Okay, let me finish.
Maze controller. Yes. And I have absolute authority in this game. Game? Game. Game.
Why are you laughing?
It gets better.
Why are you laughing at Tom Hanks' pain? He's confused. The game confused him.
He's such a great actor.
JJ, what am I doing here? Kid, why can't I remember?
Okay, that's it. You can stop the clip. Oh, that's great.
Can I show? I know we have very little time. We have so many clips. But since I mentioned it, can I show just a couple quick seconds of Bosom Buddies? Is that okay?
Okay.
For anybody who
It's a
doesn't,
pretty popular show. I'm surprised you didn't know about it.
I didn't know about it. Did you guys watch Bosom Buddies? Is this the right show I'm thinking of, right? With Tom Hanks?
Yeah. He and another dude are pretending to be women.
They're pretending to be women.
Dorm. Yeah.
So they can live in a women. Did we not watch this on the show? Am I going crazy?
No, we never watched it.
Oh, who showed me this? Okay, just real quick. If you were like me and didn't know.
When we first moved to New York, we had a great apartment that was dirt cheap.
And we found out why it was so cheap.
Our friend Amy said there was a great apartment in her building.
Dirt cheap, but it's a hotel for women. Okay, we made one adjustment.
Now these other ladies know us as Buffy and Hildegard.
That's it. That's all I wanted to show.
No.
Starring
I want them to
Tom
remake
Hanks.
that. No.
Oh, dude, gosh. Why hasn't he been canceled yet?
Because he's part of the Illuminati. That's actual conspiracy theory.
Rosmic said, I did. Are you the one that showed it to me? Maybe. Okay. What else from your list?
Let's talk a little bit about cosplays. So you go to cosplay section and bring this up. And so cosplay is another aspect of nerd culture that I'm really shocked became huge. Because I remember going to comic conventions and Star Trek conventions in the 90s, and there were some people dressed up, but it wasn't like a huge thing. But now you go to any convention, pop culture convention, and there was tons of people dressed up as all sorts of things. And it's amazing the quality of costumes, because a lot of people make their own costumes.
I love the cosplay, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun to walk around I know, again, like my friend who used to go to the Comic-Con in the 70s, and it was all about comic books, and I get it, and I understand why people miss that, but this is one of the parts of cons that I really like, is seeing what all the costumes that people are wearing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about how many cosplayers are doing it professionally. Like they're making a living off of going to various conventions and hosting meetups and other things, just dressed as Wolverine or Princess Leia. It's so weird to me.
Yeah, they sell photos and stuff as themselves as the character.
I particularly like the type of cosplays where people mix and match things, or they create some kind of twist to what they're wearing. Like I can see someone. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I forgot actually.
You said you like when there's a twist and they combine different things. Like you could see somebody, and then you didn't. I interrupted.
Oh yeah. Well, like if I've seen people who've like had awesome Iron Man costumes and stuff, and I could appreciate that. That's cool. But I think what really takes it up to another level is when you're doing the unexpected to it and adding your own kind of twist to it, kind of personalizing it a bit. That's what I really enjoy.
Wow.
And some of these costumes like cost thousands of dollars. Like the amount of money and time people put in this stuff is amazing. And like I said, a lot of people are very good looking people. I still can't get over that. Like people who are never picked on in high school or popular kids, but
it's not just for nerds anymore. Look at this, how good this Jack Sparrow is.
Yeah.
What?
Stuff like that when you turn yourself into a living cartoon, that gets just so well done.
Wow. Have you ever done cosplay?
Not really. I mean, I've dressed up as various characters for Halloween as an adult, but I've never actually gone to a convention dressed up.
Didn't you dress up as a... Oh, gosh.
Bill Cosby? Yes, I did.
You did Bill Cosby, yes. But didn't you also do a singer, a rapper?
I went as Sexual Chocolate from Coming to America.
What? I didn't know. That's not
Mr. Randy Watson.
Do you have pictures of that one?
Somewhere.
Oh my gosh. I want to see that one. These are great. Okay. Wow.
That's cute.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that's just amazing. Like the thought that went into that. It's just
okay.
But yeah, there's that. We're coming up on time. So I did have a couple of funny stuff, but I did have maybe want to briefly quickly show a toy collectible stuff.
Yeah.
At a whole toy section. Do you want to see? There's a Star Trek Mansion one. There's Star Trek Doctor Who one. And
Let's
there's a
see the
lot.
Star Trek mansion. Now, is this
Okay.
somebody's mansion that's been designed to look like the set of Star Trek?
Yes.
Oh gosh, it's gonna be
And it's
great. Have
yeah, I love looking up these things where people turn their living rooms or man caves to look like, Star Wars or Star Trek or the Bat Cave. If I was
you,
filthy rich, I'd do this.
you know my friend who did the Prancing Pony Bar, right, in his
Oh
house
yeah,
from
yeah,
Lord of the Rings?
yeah.
I've also seen somebody do a Golden Girls one.
That's wow.
It is galaxies beyond my price range. Thank you. But I got a up-close look, a Star Trek fan's tour of a dream home up for sale in Boca Raton. It's one that has futuristic touches everywhere, courtesy of a mega wealthy owner who loves sci-fi and spared no expense there.
Having too much fun with this funny little
frozen.
quip. Beam me up.
I tried to remember all the rules as I drove at warp speed to the 27,000 square foot
This guy's a
mansion
nerd.
of venture capitalist Mark Bell. I'm with Sanada Ajam, the exclusive listing agent for Mark Bell's home. Rule number one is I should never look at a home that I can't afford, Sanada. So I'm going to ask you, don't break my heart. What's it going for?
$35 million.
What?
Rule number two, then, if you're going to ignore rule number one, make sure what you're buying is out of this world. I'm in
Out
heaven.
of this world.
He
I
won't
can't believe it.
stop.
We're looking at
Starship Enterprise Bridge. It's the exact replica.
the next generation
Well,
bridge.
not
I'm finally on
exact.
it after all these years. Wow.
Whatever.
If you're a Trekkie, the bridge replica from Star Trek's The Next Generation.
Okay, let's
But-
be real. If you were a billionaire, you would do this, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have a room for each Enterprise bridge.
I believe you would. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Everyone has to wear the proper uniforms in each room.
Means a lot more to you than Bell's 1,500 bottle wine cellar, or the full-size basketball court, or the kitchen and the dining room, big enough to feed Starfleet.
He was so
Yeah,
fascinated.
you can stop there. But yeah, there's a number of these things, and what makes me sad in like instances like this, where the person's putting up for sale, more than likely the person who's going to buy that is going to have zero appreciation for any of that, and they're just going to tear it down, which makes me sad.
Oh, I hope not. Do you think so?
I think so. There's one, I can't remember if it was in the second clip, but there's one of a guy in, I don't know, Germany, some European country, who turned his, I think he lived in an apartment or some temporary place, and he decked it out. And the entire thing was Star Trek. Even the bathroom looked like it was on Star Trek Voyager.
Is it this one, Star Trek Basement?
No, it wasn't this one, but this is, see, another one. A lot of people are doing this.
A really fun story here. This is an Indiana man that designed something that truly is out of the world. This is
Out
an
of the
underground
world.
recreation of one of the world's
can't help
favorite
themselves. They
franchises.
really
Of
can't.
course, you recognize it. He built it all himself, and Todd Spann says, you know, I didn't have a lot of money to do this, and I really didn't get any help either.
But he did have a vision to go where no one has gone before.
Where no one has
And so
gone
Glenn
before.
Gamble takes us tonight on a trek through this massive trip.
Stop.
This is what I love about local news. How could you not love this?
Oh wait, you didn't get to the TARDIS one. There was
Oh,
someone who made a TARDIS living room. Yeah.
what? Okay, let's go back.
I always wonder what the local news people sound like when they're off the air. Because
I
on air,
wonder-
they're always like so chippy, like, oh, well,
Oh, they're
tell us
probably-
about the weather today, Chad.
They're probably
Well,
dark.
another 100-degree.
But wouldn't it be funny if they were the same off the air and they get home and their wife just loves it? They're like, "Hey, you know, cold front coming in today." As they open the freezer, you know, they're just always making.
My hemorrhoids are acting up again. Think I'm gonna need some cream, honey. Back to you. Let's see, where is it? Somewhere. Is it?
Is this it? Yeah. There's a TARDIS.
They can do it. You just have to have the right mindset to do it.
I am standing in the Star Trek transporter room, one of just
Where is
another
it?
amazing
Oh,
parts
there it
of
is.
this project. All right,
Oh,
Todd,
yes.
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Right there.
So I was like totally shocked.
Todd says while it may look like $1 million project, it's actually quite simple
Wow.
to build your own.
I guess the same guy did Star Trek.
The same guy did both.
Yeah. But yeah, there's tons of things like that.
Okay, what's on the funny?
So let's play. I have 2 videos. Play this first one. This is a news report from the reaction of people who just saw the original Ridley Scott Alien movie, the one with Sigourney Weaver in it in 1979. And I thought some of these people's reactions were pretty funny to it.
Okay. Can you see that? No, not yet.
Yeah, there we go.
Sunday, the Ridgely Theater in Fort Worth had the biggest day in its entire history. It sold more than The Godfather, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Superman, and Love Story. But the biggest surprise to theater employees is the number of parents bringing young children to see Alien. Did you know that this was an R-rated movie when you brought him?
Yes, we did.
Are you sorry you brought him?
Yeah.
Yes. Are you glad you saw it? Yeah. Are you sorry, sir, that you brought your son along to see Alien?
No, ma'am. I think you should have seen it. It's something that he needs to know that things like that could happen in life.
This guy's awesome. Keep playing.
Could be a true story. Based on, science. We never know.
Wait.
Things could like that.
Wait. Let me back it up. I didn't realize he kept going. This guy is hilarious.
No, ma'am. I think you should have seen it. It's something that he needs to know that things like that could happen in life. That could be a true story. Based on, science. We never know what's going on the outside of the world.
Did the movie scare you at all? Yes, ma'am, it did.
Okay, that's it.
We like horror movies.
Everyone's so polite. I love that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it
I'm
did
definitely
scare me.
Scott. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody find that kid today. I want to know how that kid's doing. Did it scar you seeing Alien at such a young age?
And then we got to finish with this classic. And we don't have to
my
show the whole thing. I'm sure you've seen this before, yeah.
I used to love, before Conan O'Brien went woke, he came to social justice Jesus and got woke, but I used to love him before that.
This is the famous Triumph the Insult Comic Dog segment where he went and visited some people waiting online for Star Wars The Phantom Menace in 99. And it's hilarious. And we're obviously not going to play the whole thing, so you can just feel free to skip around a bit. But it's one of my favorite segments of
ever.
Any talk show. Yeah.
Yes, it's premiere night here for Attack of the Clones, but outside the Ziegfeld Theater is the real show, Return of the Dorks. Thousands of 35-year-old men waiting days, even months, for just a taste of George Lucas's table scrap. Lonely men who have never had sex, not even with a Catholic priest. And here is
Should I skip around so we don't get a
skip
strike?
around. Yeah, so we don't. Yeah.
by 12-year-olds. Unbelievable. Look, among the nerds, I found an actual girl here. Look at this. Not too shabby around here, huh, honey? The male-female ratio, yeah? I mean, you've got your veritable pick of the litter. You can choose from all kinds of guys who have no idea how to please you. Look at you. How are you, cutie? What parent forced you to do this? Right over here.
I'm Princess Twi'lek.
That's adorable. That's really very, very cute. I'll be right over here. It's very, very cute. For me to poopa. don't you forget to finish your fillet of fish.
This guy.
This.
If I didn't come out here and find out what you Jedi were up to, I need not ask, of course.
Look at this. Look at this. It's a geek from another dimension. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings.
Come here. I am Black Wolf the Dragon Master, New York's unofficial wizard, and don't you forget it.
All right. And don't you forget to finish your fillet of fish. Burger King, where all Dragon Masters eat.
Where's the Vader one? Oh, this is the classic moment.
Exciting. Darth Vader himself is here. All the other nerds tremble in his presence.
What are you supposed to be?
I am Triumph! Oh, scary nerd!
This would be my chest box that helps me to breathe.
So this is to help you breathe, yes?
Yes.
And which of these buttons calls your parents to pick you up?
Okay, pause it right there. So Robert Smigel, who does the voice of Triumph, a lot of these lines he and his fellow writers came up with prior to him going out and doing this. But he semi-improv. He had a rough idea of some of the jokes he wanted to do, but he semi-improv this at this moment, and that's why he kind of cracked up because as soon as he thought of it, that's yeah.
I'm with SD0 in the chat who says, I remember this. I remember this. Some of this line for line.
Yeah.
That tells you how many times I watched this when this came out. I watched it over and over and over again. It's so funny. So well done, like classic comedy, right? And the nerds love it. You know, how could you not? It's so funny, you know?
Yeah, he's fucking fun at it, but nerds, but you know, they understand it. It's with love.
Yeah. This is great. Should we stop here so we don't get a strike?
Yeah, stop there. But one of my other favorite moments of that video is towards the end where he brings out a guy dressed as Mr. Spock, and he just flicks everyone off as he slowly walks down the line, and all these Star Wars fans are going, "Boo! Star Trek sucks!" It's so hilarious.
That's so funny that it's like, you know, you have your allegiances like in sports. No, not Star Trek. Not that it's Star Wars thing.
Well, I never
Honestly.
understood that, like the whole Star Wars or Star Trek, because they're two very different types of story, and because they have "star" in the title and they take place in space, like they're not remotely the same. So it's very odd that people are always fighting over that. But Star Trek's better anyway.
You're like, I don't really get it, but you know, Star Trek's better. So I'm glad I'm above all that, but Star Trek's better. And I wanted to close the show with a game we like to play. We haven't played in a few episodes. Is there a tattoo of that?
No,
And
surprise.
since I mentioned how in my old life I for a time was considering and getting a TARDIS tattoo, I wanted to see, is there a TARDIS tattoo? Do people get that tattooed? And of course they do. Look at all these TARDI.
TARDI. More like retard.
There's all kinds of them. And actually, some of these are very creative. But, you know, one of the things my ex-husband said to dissuade me from getting this was, he said, at the end of the day, you're going to have a British phone booth tattooed on your arm. The phone booth. You know? And
awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't get it.
There are
But
worse tattoos to get.
there are. Some of these are nicely done. I still wouldn't get it today, but these people love Doctor Who. There you go. Well, thank you, Mystery Chris, for compiling all of these fun links for us to watch. Especially, I loved watching the old news footage, the fan reactions, and you guys have no idea how much research Mystery Chris does on a given topic. I mean, we only touched on maybe 15% of the links you sent, and I'm so happy having you back, and I know the audience is happy to have you back. And we are doing these now. I should have said up front, we're doing these every other week at 8 o'clock Central on Wednesdays. And every other week, I'm doing that Christian panel at 6 o'clock Central. So we're alternating these. And what is our next topic? We've already selected it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Oh, are we going to change it? Okay.
No, but we gotta clarify it a little bit, I guess.
Okay. Good. Okay. I won't say anything then. It's a surprise. It's a mystery, like Mystery Chris. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. And if you like the show, you can support the show at Subscribestar or here at YouTube or now on Rumble. You can also support us at Locals or Patreon. If you're not able to do that, you can support the show by hitting like or leaving a comment. That helps the algorithm and helps the video get recommended to people who like similar things that you like. And yeah, I've had a good time hanging out with you and a good time reading the chat. You guys are really funny. You always crack me up. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it was fun, Carrie and chat. Thank y'all. Bye.
Bye.